Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I am joined by Rosie Popa. Rosie, thank you so much for being part of this series.
Thank you, Chris. It's so nice to be on the show today.
Thank you. Rosie, we're sitting here on the 2nd of April 2025. It is a miserable day here in Brisbane. It is pouring rain. I'm glad I'm inside. I feel for the kids at school and playing sport. I think everything's cancelled again today.
Oh,
How are you
really?
going, and how's your day started today?
Oh, it's been wonderful. We're actually like 25 and sunny down here in Melbourne, so can't complain at all. But day's been really lovely so far. Actually, I've just come back from spending some time with some other retired athletes. So every Wednesday we come together and kind of have a little support group together. So always just like such a nice stopgap midweek to kind of come together and disperse and get on with our lives, I guess. So it's really, really lovely. So far,
That's
so
awesome.
good.
So far, so good. And on a Wednesday, midweek too, actually trying to, hump day, trying to recollaborate.
I know.
Collaborate, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Rosie, 2025 so far for you, a quarter of the way through the year. How are you? How's your 2025 begun?
Can't quite believe it. Hey, it's felt as though it's gone at a glacial pace, but also extremely fast. So I guess for context, I've just returned back to Australia after being a year abroad studying my MBA at Oxford. So just coming back and getting back into the routine of work, but also I think my big focus this year is the idea of what is the definition of healthy, coming off being an elite athlete and having sport being my job and being my main focus to going, what is sport, what is balance, what is career, like, and actually having things in context with each other. So that's my big theme for the year so far. And there's definitely been a lot of challenges and a lot of really massive learnings, but I think so far are pretty amazing because I've been in a state of discomfort, which means I'm doing something different, which I think ultimately is a good thing.
Yeah, Rosie Popa, the rower versus Rosie Popa, the individual. People know you for your rowing. They know you for your gold medal in 2021, which we'll touch on. How have you gone about differentiating the two as a personality, or are they the same?
Yeah, a really good question. I think a big thing that I've been sitting with in the last 3 years has been, or probably for the last 6 or 7 years, is that rowing has always been something that I've done. It's part of what I do, but it's actually not who I am. And that was a big focus that I really tried to reframe. I actually missed out on the Olympic Games in 2016, and I think I put all my eggs in the basket of being this sport identity. And my parents are both Olympic medalists in rowing, and they're both rowing coaches as well, and being deeply embedded in the community, which is a wonderful thing. But I think it was something that was all encompassing, and then missing out on the Olympics and that not working out. And it was a really big adjustment to figure out who I was outside of the sport. So I think especially after Tokyo, where you have this stamp of verification of walking around being a gold medalist, and I received an OAM from that as well, that you have this recognition now. And now I feel like it's even more important to develop other parts of me and understanding what does the gold medal or what does my services in sport actually mean, and that giving back. Because I think as an Olympic champion, you have this, I guess you have this profile that you could either use to promote sport and promote overall well-being and striving for something better. And I've just decided to kind of lean into that, which has been really powerful because I think it highlights that it's not just about the end result. It's so much about the learnings along the way. So that's something that I'm really focusing on and taking into my career now, and knowing that, I'm not just my job, I'm not just someone that stays fit and active. I'm not just a friend, but I'm so much more than that. So it's really quite special. And I think it helps me stay really proud of my result, because I know it's part of this thing that I can take with me, but also I have that quiet confidence that I know that I'll show up for myself in those really, really big moments that matter.
And just touching on that, when it comes to your relationship with rowing as a child with very successful parents in rowing, I'd imagine rowing at the early ages, like, oh, what's this thing? Oh, it's what mum and dad do. Oh, I might get into it, etc. How's your relationship with rowing changed over time from being a kid to where you are now?
Yeah, I think, when your family friends are the awesome foursome, or your family friends are these people that are really well recognized growing up. And I have all these childhood memories of sitting on the riverbank and kind of waiting for mum and dad to finish up rowing. And it was just something that was always quite deeply embedded in everything that we do. And because they're amazing purists of the sport, that they're there for the right reasons in terms of giving back and educating people, because it's such an amazing sport. But I actually started my athletic career as a basketball player and really, really loved that, and was playing at quite a high level, but had quite a serious injury when I was a teenager. And then from there, I actually switched over to rowing. So even though it would have been really easy for my parents to force me to row, it was always something that I decided to kind of lean into, because we knew, you know, if I came into that world, I would be Sue and Yon's daughter. And we had a lot of conversations about, you know, almost keeping church and state separate, of going that we're there to support you, but we don't want to coach you, and we want to keep that parent-child relationship really strong. And I think, you know, as I've gone on throughout my career, I've definitely had ebbs and flows with the sport, and I guess my relationship to it, especially, I guess, missing out on this thing that had always been part of my life. And then all of a sudden I didn't have anything to train for the day after I missed out, you know, and because I wasn't sure if I would continue on after that. But I think when I decided to come back to it, I decided to return because I really loved it. And it wasn't this vendetta that I had an unfinished business, but it's like something that I really, you know, it was something that I really loved. And I loved being in that team environment. And so it was definitely a really full circle moment, because I also made the decision to retire in 2021 because I still loved it and I didn't feel burnt out. And it is something that has given me so much. And obviously I have taken a big step away from it, but I can still look back and feel, have really, really fond memories of it. And I think I'm able to kind of not have that real burnout where you can't even look at the sport, or, you know, all these really horrible stories that you hear of athletes that almost have this trauma associated with this sport. So understanding everyone's career and experience is really different. But that is one of the big reasons why I decided to retire when I did, is because I still loved it. And I probably had, you know, a little bit more to give, but I mentally had ticked all the boxes that I wanted to, and I wanted to leave it there.
Yeah, and you left on such a high. But I want to go back to 2016, the rejection of the Olympics, the moment, how it happened, and then in retrospect, looking back, and how important that moment was.
I was actually thinking about this the other day because it happened on Valentine's Day in 2016, so February, what is it, 14th?
14th, yep.
14th. And it was actually something that, you know, I'm working with a therapist at the moment, just kind of going through and all these things that I hadn't thought of in a really long time, and kind of airing them out and how I can move on from it. And I was thinking about it because it's, you know, you walk into this room and I found out that I didn't make the Olympic squad through an email, and then they also did like a follow-up in-person kind of a debrief, but it was at a certain selection event, and in the lead up to the selections I had been injured. I had been on the team in 2015, and I'd suffered an injury going into the 2016 trials, and then didn't make it to trials, which obviously was just such a heartbreaking thing, because I definitely had the skills and capability to be on that team, but just my body shut down and it broke down, and I wasn't able to get myself right leading into the trials, which is a whole other story. But the moment itself, I feel like, you know, when you've never had that experience of, for a lack of a better word, failure, or that first really big loss, it really hits you like a ton of bricks. And I think I didn't really know how to feel because I had no prior experience, because I'd always made a team and I'd always, you know, been one of the top athletes no matter what sport I'd done. And it was that really big moment of the door just shutting, and it's just like a really big void and a big shock. And it's really quite hard to explain because, you know, there's so much that you can do that's in your power as an athlete. And you can always improve. You don't do well on a certain thing, you can kind of come back the next day and do it and have that iterative improvement. But it was that first moment of like, wow, even if I train really hard tomorrow, it's still not happening this year. So that was, I got goosebumps even thinking about it. You know, it's just that moment of going, okay, well, what now? So I came back I was in Penrith in New South Wales, which is where the the selection trials was, and I came back and, I luckily having the parents that I do, there was nothing but support. And I think I realized on a personal note that they would still love me even though I didn't make a rowing. That was a big thing. Like, it's going to be completely fine, and took the best part of the year to recover. So I actually went and did a bit of a eat, pray, love in South America and worked on a lemon farm picking lemons and worked in a hostel and just did things that I had always had to say no to, and kind of saw how the other side lived in terms of having that ultimate freedom, because you do, to a certain extent live in this institutionalized mindset and routine, and just not having routine or structure and just being and existing. And I think kind of having that massive reset and knowing that that will always be there. Once I came back from that trip, I really started to engage with my club here in Melbourne, Banks Rowing Club, and the coach, Nick Mitchell at the time, just was encouraging me to come down and said, just come down because there's a really good squad here. It's a really good environment. And that's when I first learned about like club rowing of, oh, wow, I can just do sport because I love it, or I just want to be there with my mates. And then I had another amazing coach, David Orchard, who's, it gently encouraged me to kind of come get back in the boat and see, kind of try to tap into that potential that I had. And I think I was just really surrounded by a lot of support at that time. The Victorian Institute of Sport helped me with my physiology. So, my parents here and all my friends back here. And I think it was just a massive rebuild from that of knowing, well, the worst has already happened. So if I go again, I already know what that feels like, that if it happens again, I know that it will be completely okay. And I think it took away a lot of that fear for me of missing out. And I think it just completely liberated me of going, all right, I'm just going to go for Tokyo. And at that point, it was 2020, but I've got, 3 years in me. I'm going to put my foot on the accelerator and just see what I can do, and not leave any stone unturned. So it really helped kind of unlock this absolute freedom and just doing things because I didn't have to come back to rowing. It was something that I chose to. And it really unlocked the fact that this is something that I really, really wanted to do, which I think probably pre-2016, I had this maybe heaviness of obligation that it's, I'd come this far, I may as well finish it off or have a go. So I think that really reflected in my training results as well, that I was taking more chances or taking more risks or kind of taking accountability of my training and knowing what worked for me.
Yeah, and the Brisbane Lions this year had I think when you're skating on thin ice, you might as well dance. It sort of felt a bit like that when you've got a little bit more freedom, and you've also been to they lost the grand final the year before by 4 points. So the rejection, the feeling. Did you 2017 when you decided to go again? Did you have in mind to A, participate in the Olympics, and B, to win a gold medal? Was that a goal, or was it more like just going, I'm just going to give it my best shot and see what happens, because knowing I've given it my best shot before and it didn't go my way?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think rowing is such a slog where you do so much training for such, there's so few races. So for context, you train 3 sessions a day, 6 days a week. And there's, 3 key regattas, 2 World Cups, and a World Championships. And then if you break it down again, so each of those races is 6 minutes, and you do 2 to 3 races in each one of them. So you're racing for less than an hour at the international level per year. So that's like the ratio of 6 days a week of training to 1 hour of racing per year. And there's obviously so many things outside of your control. I was in a crew boat, so I would always row with either 4 or in a 4 or an 8. So you're either 25% or 12.5%, of what you can control at that given race. So there's so many other things going on. There's injuries, there's all these other things. So the way that I really approached the 2020 cycle, we call them Olympiads, we call them cycles, was that every day just trying to get better than the day I was before. And because I was pretty unfit after, picking lemons on a lemon farm, I guess I was improving quite quickly, but I also was trying not to get injured. And by then, in 2017, Mrs. Gina Reinhardt had started funding national training centres for the sport of rowing. So that it actually created a national training centre in Penrith, where the top 25 women go. You get selected for that, and then the top 25 men are in Canberra, where the old AIS boat shed is. So that was like kind of my first hurdle to be like, okay, well, I've got to get into the National Training Centre. And then from there, the pool of athletes that are chosen for the Australian team are based off that 25. So you're kind of in selection every single day. And you've kind of kept on your toes. So I think for me, it was making sure that I could kind of come up the ranks in a way that I was an athlete that couldn't not get selected. I think there's a really big mindset shift of, oh, I want to be on the team, to like, okay, what boat am I going to be in? And I wanted to be in that, okay, what boat am I going to be in? And then from there, I was like, okay, I want to be in like the top X amount, or I want to make sure that whoever I row with, they're ranking higher than when they're rowing with anyone else. So I really broke it down, because I think if you're thinking about being an Olympic champion in the middle of winter in 2018, it's pretty hard to put in context. So I really tried to focus on staying present and understanding that you have to kind of as a big thing in rowing, you talk about staying on the stroke that you're on. So I was really trying not to think too far ahead, which would mean that maybe I would cut corners or skip things, and try to be really present and just trust the coaches. So we would kind of every week kind of look big and then kind of bring it back. So every week we'd be like, okay, X amount of weeks to the Olympic Games or World Championships. This is what we're doing this month. This is what we're doing this week. This is what we're doing today, and so I think it was you understanding what you were aiming for. And obviously a medal at the Olympic Games is always something that you think about, but it probably wasn't until the 2021 selection, and I was selected in a pretty red hot crew, and we were breaking the Olympic record in training with ease, and we were kind of doing it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is kind of something that could be a real chance here, and it really switched your mindset of, I want to be an Olympian, to I want to be on I want to make the A final, to I want to be a medalist, to I want to be a gold medalist. So we worked really hard at the fact that we were the favourites to win, but we had to actually break it down to what we were doing in training every single day that would get to that end result. So it's kind of like those two forces pulling you from, okay, I know what I'm working towards, but I can't just think about it. I have to actually be doing the do. So that's something that we did really, really well, of staying really present and keeping ourselves super accountable, so that when it came to race day at the Olympic Games, we just had to execute what we'd already done before, which was break Olympic records.
I'm curious to know around the four. Were you paired with different people along those trials? Did you have different teams? How much individual work did you have to do going, pick me in the four, versus maybe your friend that might not get picked that you're racing with in a four beforehand? I mean, how did you go with that battle of an individual self-worth to be picked in that four versus working as a team to win a gold medal?
Yeah, so you're kind of at the mercy a lot of the coaching and of the first kind of decision that needs to be made is what will be the priority boat from the coaching staff. So we had an extra challenge that the girls the women that I was selected with in the four, two of them were actually doing another event as well, which is really rare for rowing. So we had to actually split our time when it came to the Olympic Games, that we were in two pairs, which is two people with one oar. So 50% of the time that we were in two pairs, and then 50% of the time we were in the four. So I was kind of half a week a training boat to this other boat class, and then would come together. So that was a lot of complexity, and in terms of executing a massive challenge. I think that is just there should be a case study about it. It was just amazing experience. But the actual selection itself is that throughout the year, you're kind of in this constant selection, and you do kind of find synergy with the person to sit that becomes like your pair partner. You kind of have a few people that you click with really well, because it's not just physical performance. A lot of it is the communication and how you kind of work together. So I had kind of a few people that I clicked with really, really well. And then based on certain trials before the Olympic trials, you're kind of matched up, and then you're ranked in a certain pair leading into the selection trials. And then from that, they have a pairs race. So all the pairs that are matched together get raced down, and then the top 8 people within the results of that kind of gets selected into certain rotations. And then from there, based on like the crews that they want, you'll go from being in a pair kind of performance together, and then you'll get individually trialed against other people, and it's a pretty grueling week. So you're doing race after race, and sometimes you feel like they're just trying to throw eggs at a wall and seeing what will crack, or they're just trying new combinations. So it's a really mentally challenging, but I think also on the other end, you're seeing your teammates push really, really hard, and they're showing up and they're delivering as well, which I think you need to do, and everyone needs to be selected. So when you get to those really high pressure moments, you've seen people do the work. So it is a mix of kind of the consistent performance throughout the year, or how people have performed at previous world championships, but then the kind of the icing on the cake is that selection week where they're pretty grueling, and they definitely put some hairs on your chest and make you pretty tough.
Yeah. And then through the selection process and getting closer to the year 2020, and you maybe getting to a point of, you know, the pointy end of selection, etc. And then this flu appeared in sort of, you know, December, January, February of 2020. Yeah. I mean, what were you thinking around then? And then the athletes, was there a team picked by then, or was it loosely picked? And then to actually go, what is going on, and then bring that back to mindfulness perspective, which you were talking about in 2017 around health and family and support crew, to go, there's something a bit bigger here than actually an Olympic Games.
Yeah, it was an insane experience. So we'd actually gone through the week that I was just talking to you about. We'd had that 2 weeks prior, and then we had heard of this virus kind of happening around the world, but I think you're in this bubble yourself. I personally wasn't really paying attention because I think, you know, there's always, before any Olympic Games, there's always, you know, rumors that it won't go through. With Rio, they talked about, you know, the plumbing or, you know, infrastructure and stuff like that. So I was very conscious of kind of just focusing on of what I could control. But we were out. I had been selected into the women's 4, but the actual lineup itself was completely different to the one that I raced in Tokyo. There was only one other girl, Lucy Steffen, who sat behind me, was actually selected in the women's 4 for 2020 and 2021 as well. But the other 2, there was a change. And we were just getting off the water, and the coaches were zooming around in the tinnies and saying, "Oh, we've got at 11 o'clock, we've got a meeting with the high performance director, so weights will be cancelled." And that's like, oh, that's so weird. Why would you cancel? I mean, talking about like you're so kind of just in the moment. It's crazy to think now. It's like, of course, you kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, but not at the moment. I mean, just everyone, I think, at
you're
the
just
time
at work,
like
right?
Doing it work and going. I remember they're saying, "Oh, you know, they might even cancel an NRL game." You're like, no.
And talking about like, you know, these immovable objects that you think about, like it just was so unworldly. So they had the chat with us after, and they said, yeah, well, at this stage there is a COVID-19 is happening, and Australia has made the decision, if the Olympics does go ahead, we think it's too dangerous, that we will not send a team regardless if it does happen. But also because this is a gymnasium, you have to leave because it's now I can't even remember
a hot spot or a hot zone.
Oh yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. You're no longer permitted because too many people in the building. And then because of that, you're in New South Wales, and if you're from out of state, you probably better leave within the next 48 hours because we don't know if the borders are going to shut. So I just was like, okay, in kind of very objective mode of just, okay, pack up this house that you've been living in with a couple of the other teammates and just get out of there. So I was out of there within 2 days. And then it was very surreal because the Victorian Institute of Sport provided like every necessary equipment that you needed. And I set up a little kind of gym training center here at my folks' place. And I remember I was sitting on the Watt bike, was just a stationary bike, and about to take that first step. And my mum had just like walked past, and I just like froze in space. And I was like, because at that point they're going, okay, the Olympics, we don't know when you're going to be back. We don't know when the training center is going to be open. Like, just go home and train and we'll let you know. And so it's like, you know, you're about to take that first pedal. And you're like, I don't know where the end result is going to be right now. And I just started crying, and Mum was like, oh, what are you talking about? I was like, I just don't know how I'm going to get through this. Like, it just feels like I've climbed Everest to, you know, I've missed out on the Olympic Games and I've selected in the, you know, one of the top boats within 3 years. And it just feels like you're kind of falling down the other end of the mountain, but you haven't kind of put your flag in the stake before you fall down. And then she did this amazing thing where she actually just pulled up a chair and sat next to me on the watt bike and was like, I will just be here with what you need just to know that you're not alone. And she's like, well, I also have nothing else to do because we are locked down. She's like, I'm happily, she's watching YouTube. Or
I'm in no rush to go anywhere.
Yeah. Like, it's more entertaining to see you sitting stationary for 3 hours sitting on a watt bike than doing anything else. So, I think in that moment, just kind of knowing that you're not alone and having this, my mum was in the women's four in 1984 that in the same boat class as me, and that was the last time that a women's boat had medalled in that boat class. So it was like this really, within 40 years of kind of this full circle moment. And I think just kind of having someone be like, well, no matter what, like I've just got to get started, and because there's nothing else going on. I may as well train. And then it developed into, well, if the Olympics goes ahead or not, I want to be really, really proud of the fact that I had a red hot crack. And, and that was kind of what it came to. And I was like, okay, whatever the end result ends up being, that I can put myself and hold my head really, really high and say, like, I had an absolute red hot crack at this. And I dotted all my I's and crossed every single one of my T's. And I really just delivered for myself. So, and again, I just broke it down and was like, okay, well, we have a 30-minute rowing machine test every month. And I just wanted to make sure that the result that I got from the next month was better than the one in the previous month. And that was my goal. And then that was, and then what can I do on a day-to-day basis? So, I think there was so many lessons learned of just kind of breaking down something that was overwhelming and may not exist, may not even happen, but just breaking it down to what you can do in that moment. And I think it was, a testament that I started doing a lot of mindfulness practice probably in 2012. And then it I started to really kind of lean into that and understanding the importance of that during that kind of 6 months that I was home training at my parents' backyard.
There's a lot to be said about uncertainty in life and which creates or triggers anxiety or it triggers a lot of emotions. But the fact that you said to yourself, either way, like if it's this year or if it's next year, I want to be there. I want to give it the red hot crack. Where do you think that little desire came from? Was it the rejection in 16, or was it like a point in your life where you're like, I'm all in, this is my punch card?
I think it's like, it was just a mindset shift of the way that you decide to live your life. Like, the only moment that you have is the one right now. And I think if you can kind of show up and, we had this thing when I was the training center, it's like just be the 100% of your 100% that day. So if you're really tired or you're really fatigued or in a bad mood, but like if the best that you can do in that day is get out of bed and go for a walk, or get out of bed and, do a PB on a oak test. Like, I think it's the mindset is actually coming and being like, okay, I know that I'm at a certain diminished capacity, but I'm just going to do the best I can. And I think it comes from a place of kindness within yourself of going like, well, what's the point of living a life if you're not living it to your fullest potential, and not coming from a stage of kind of always having to put your foot on the accelerator, but actually being like, well, if, I know what I'm capable of doing, and I would just hate to leave this earth whenever that ends up being, to like feel as though I didn't live up to that certain potential. And I think it kind of just manifested itself in rowing, where I was like, I know that I knew in the back of my mind that I would be done after Tokyo, whatever. And I was like, I'm just going to squeeze everything I can out of this. And, it's not, it wasn't a mindset that was sustainable at all. But I think that, the Olympic Games is not meant to be this thing that is accessible. Like, it's, the motto is like higher, stronger, faster. It's not, sustainable
Yep.
balance. And, for me, I'm like, I want to be kind of one and done. I want to come in and execute and leave and move on. And I understand a lot of people do multiple Olympic Games, but for me, it was like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm going to have a really big peak here, and then I'm going to move on. And now the way I live my life, the goalposts have changed because I can't live in that intensity anymore, but it was context appropriate. And I think, that's where it came from, being like, okay, I'm just going to squeeze everything out, because if I don't take advantage of this opportunity right now, and I put myself in such an amazing position into 2020, I owed it to myself and owed it to my teammates who I'd rowed with to show up and be the best Rosie on any given day.
Yeah, that's a great way to live your life. And you're right, in terms of a finite, there's a 4-year gap, firstly, whereas if you're a cricketer, you get out for a duck, you can play the next game
Yeah,
next Saturday,
exactly.
right? The Olympics, you miss out,
Totally.
it's 4 years, right? So
Yeah.
there's actually a big shift in terms of the time perspective, and
Yeah.
you articulated that really well. I'm curious to know that the phone call or the email that you got in 2021 to say you're going.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right, where it kind of happens, and because I feel like you kind of know it before the actual official. It was a really, honestly, it was a really, really good feeling to see it on paper. I think I'd been kind of craving that moment of this is something that no one can take away from me. So I think at the end of the selection, it was pretty. The question wasn't if I would be in the four; it would be what would be the layout of the four. So I kind of had a bit of a decision. Me and Lucy, we could either have Jess and Annabelle, who were the girls that I was mentioning before, that were also going to be in the pair, because that was a really, really amazing combination. So do we make the decision to all buy into this four, where we are separating our time and dividing our efforts, or do we have two other girls that were ranked third and come in, and then that would be 100% of the time? And I think so. Jess, who sat in front of me and was in the pair, we actually trained together when some of the restrictions tried to ease up here in Melbourne, and I think we really pushed each other, and in this friendly competition really showed each other that we were the real deal. And I think over that COVID year, Annabelle, Lucy, Jess, and myself, we kind of all showed each other that we were really, really, really committed. And not saying that the others weren't, but there was like a special energy between the four of us. And when we did have the opportunity to row on the four, it was like, wow, this is why you do it. Like, I'm with, three of them. I've lived with Annabelle, and me and Lucy and Jess, we're from the same state. We've done a lot of rowing together, and the trust was just there. And I think there kind of was no doubt in my mind that those were the three women that I wanted to be at the Olympic Games with. So to actually have the opportunity to do that and be with like three of my best mates, like, I don't actually know if there are words to explain it, because it was just this energy that felt, and it felt so compatible and so right. And no matter what the world was throwing at us, I just knew that those three women would step up, and I would step up as well. So it was pretty amazing to actually have it like official.
Yeah, and then to actually go to the Olympics, get the call right. We're on here. We've been doing some good times. The thinking around the Olympic campaign, any sort of self-doubts, any sort of negative thoughts come into it, or is it like, this is the four, as you mentioned, it feels right, let's get going through the heats and let's get to the final?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it actually ended up being a positive, but because there was so much uncertainty with the Olympics, actually, if it would go ahead. So initially we were told, even with like the dining hall situation, we were told that, you had to either be rowing or you had to be in your room at the Olympic Village, and they will bring food to you. And then it was like, okay, they're going to ease it up a little bit, that you can go to the dining halls. And then it was, we were actually in Penrith about to leave to go to Rockhampton for a pre-departure camp a few weeks before. But then the borders to New South Wales and Queensland were going to close, so we had to pack up our bags again really, really quickly and actually drive to Canberra before midnight to get to the ACT to be able to fly out to Queensland. Like, there was all these other crazy things that are happening, and we were only able to get into the Olympic Village 5 days before. So there was all this like chaos. It just felt like a cyclone around you. And I think we were just going like, the easiest thing was actually rowing from A to B. Like, that was the most calm, of being like, oh my gosh, I get to actually just do this thing. And it was also in Tokyo, nearly 40 degrees every day and 95% humidity. Like, it was just, the elements were crazy as well. And I think in terms of doubt, I never doubted the ability of the four. I think as we had these big conversations of saying, the last 10 days of the Olympics, it's nothing to do with your physical performance or mental, and not freaking yourself out. So we actually came in almost with like a mentality plan of knowing, okay, when these things try to trigger you, how can you just focus on what you're doing? And I guess the only time that, it was a bit rocky was the day before our Olympic final, actually. the women's pair semi-final was meant to go ahead the day before our final, but a typhoon had come through the day before, which pushed the women's pair semi to 2 hours after the four final. So the night before, we were talking about logistics of how are we going to do really well in this four event, but logistically get Jess and Annabelle on a stage that they can row straight up again and do their semi-final in the pair. So it's like all these different things. So I think I just remember having this moment before the Olympic final. There was like almost like the bleachers that had no one in there because it was no fans were allowed, but just kind of one of those walls, and it had the big Olympic rings there. And I just remember thinking, thank F I'm here. Like, thank God was able to get to the start line not having COVID, because we had to do COVID tests every morning as well. And if you tested positive, you went up to the race. Like, we all got here in one piece, healthy, and now I can just do my damn thing and get to the finish line. So every time we got on the boat, it was a relief. But I think it was that mentally managing all the craziness around to get to the stuff that you actually enjoyed.
And then to get to the final in the 6 minutes 15, 17, I can't remember the actual time.
15, yeah.
15.
37, yeah.
6:15, 37. And then to get over the line against the Netherlands, which was 6 minutes 15 and something minus 40 something 0.4 of a second over 6 minutes odd. That last little bit with the Netherlands, did you? What was it? The mental strength, the physical strength. You mentioned that you touched on that, but did you look over? Is it a blur? Is it clear in your memory, like the replay?
It's pretty clear. I think there's so much sensation because you've tapered physically, so you're actually super, super fresh. A lot of it is actually holding yourself back, that you're not kind of firing too early. And also with really hot conditions, there was also a tailwind. You're actually moving through really, really quickly. So I'm not sure if anyone's been on a rowing machine before, but it felt like the fan, or the little thing that says 1 to 10 on the actual the fan, it felt like it was down at 1. So it's like really, really light, and you kind of almost feel like you can't grab it. Or when your gears on a bike are really light, you kind of can't feel like you're getting purchase. So we knew that. But the last couple 100 meters, so it's funny that you say about looking out. So I used to look out a lot when I was younger, and I just didn't think too much of it. But rowing is such an offensive sport that actually if you look over and see what other people are doing, it doesn't matter, because you can't actually, there's no defense. You just have to go and just say, like, catch me, good luck. It's kind of the mindset. But I used to look out kind of out of habit. And then I remember once Lucy said to me, and she was like, when you look out, it makes, because she was making the calls. So it was just the four of us. There wasn't a person steering called a coxswain and making the calls. So she would make the calls and kind of be the coach in the boat of saying, push here, we're good here, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, when you look out the boat, it means to, like, it feels like you don't trust me. I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I trust you, Lucy. But she's like, you have to understand what that feels like to me. And I was like, fair enough, because if I was in her position and if I had made a call saying, we're good, don't look out, we're completely fine, you're seeing someone do it, it just kind of puts you off a little bit. So I made a big commitment and never to look out and just kind of focus on what I was doing. But Lucy was calling, and she called it completely perfectly in terms of, she goes, well, they're coming, but we're completely fine. We had a few pushes. There was like a side breeze that came and kind of knocked us a little bit. So my actual oar, my handle was actually really slippery. So a lot of my thinking was just making sure not to crab or kind of stuff up. Crabbing is when you kind of don't place the blade in the water properly and you can slow it down. So for me, it was like, oh crap, like this is the moment, like this is what you're talking about. And I remember kind of thinking, just do it once at a time. Like the finish line will come and you can kind of feel it looming, and they were getting really, really close. But I had that really big, I knew Lucy, if she said we're good, then I knew that we were good. So, because it was so close, like, it was what we was. But I mean, I think we broke the Olympic record by like 12 seconds that day. It's not like we were going slow. So, yeah, it was just very surreal, but I remember a lot of it. But the race itself, I think it was just really, really fun. And I think it got pretty stressful at the end, but I think it was, that Dutch crew was an amazing athlete. I think all of them are now Olympic champions, or 3 of them are from Paris. So, it's an amazing crew, and an amazing competitors to be against. So I think kind of seeing them in Paris and dominate there, that just makes me realize the caliber of competition that we had.
So it was about, I think it was 375, seconds is the race. I think it was, what did you say, 6 minutes and 15?
Oh,
375 seconds, and you won the gold medal by less than half a second, I believe, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Out of all of that, my question to you is that, half a second is pretty quick. We're just talking right now, another half a second. The difference in that, and if you had come second in that race, how would you have felt?
I mean, it's always hard to tell, right? Because I have no lived experience, and I've come away with the mindset that I do of not having to, I guess, actually face that dilemma, because I think that the even numbers, if you cut second or fourth or sixth, I think they're cruel, right? Because you kind of go, if you're second, you didn't win. If you're fourth, you didn't medal. If you're sixth, you came last. I think it's a really hard position to be in. I think, like, personally for me, I had kind of gave all that I wanted to give in the sport. I think that I would have loved to, if that ended up happening, to actually be able to walk away and say that's the reality of the situation, and kind of hang my hat there, because I think a silver medal is also a phenomenal, feat. I think going to the Olympic Games is incredible itself. So I find it really hard to answer that question, because that's not my reality. But I also know that I gave everything, and I don't think I couldn't have squeezed another 3 years out of myself from that, because my priorities since then have really changed. Like, I think for me, I gave all my 20s and pretty much all my teenage years to the sport. And I think I'm excited now about, how can I adopt a lot of the mindset that I took in the sport into other avenues, but also explore a lot of other parts of myself. So yeah, I can't answer that question. But I would love to say that, I'd be able to leave the sport really, really proud.
Yeah, and you kind of make your own luck, in the sense that your journey and everything that went before that, and all the training sessions, to know that you are on top of your game and be at your best when your best is needed, and you were the best, and you were number one in the world, and you won a gold medal, and you deserve to be the best in the world. No one can ever take that away from you now.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah.
And then from that, obviously, jubilation, everything, lots of emotions, I'd imagine. What was the main emotion in one word that you would describe winning a gold medal, being the best in the world?
I think that this is probably one of the things that I look back on, and if I could change anything, I would, because, we had the women's semi then straight after, and the first thing I said was, let's get Jess and Annabelle off the water, because they've got it. And I think I didn't sit in that moment and really just lean into it and really celebrate. Like, I think I straight away was going, I know I'm going to be Olympic champion for the rest of my life. Let's make sure everyone's okay. And I think, because things move at such a continuous pace, or as an athlete, it's always like, okay, well, I did good, box tick, let's move on to the next thing. And I think, the feeling itself, I kind of was in such a task-oriented moment. It was like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. And I just didn't take that moment to really, really soak it in. And I think that that's been the biggest learning for me. If I had just not had any other thought, but in just completely been in that moment, I think that would have been the cherry on top. But, it was such a crazy time, and it was just we had to be in logistics mode, because I'd, got up and stood up and, done all these things. That's probably not my character as well. I was, I think one of my superpowers in rowing was the fact that I was thinking about other people, in terms of from a caring mindset, to set them up for success as well. So, and consoling people when they're not doing well, and not, necessarily kind of putting myself first at times. And I think sometimes you just have to have that moment where you kind of know a chapter's ending, to just be that was a great book. What a way to finish, and just sit in that moment. So yeah, I think, again, I'm not, too hard on myself, but if I could do it again, I probably would, relish in that moment a little bit more. But I also think it's helped me have this kind of delayed gratification of man, that was just so amazing. I think it feels, my life is so different now that I'm not in that world at all. But it just is so nice to have in my back pocket and being like, you know what, you showed up for yourself. That was really, really amazing. And if there's another like pinnacle moment like that again, just, stop and enjoy it. So that's all you can do really, is just learn from experience.
I don't think anyone would begrudge anyone by saying anything about it when they've won a gold medal or the heat of the moment or Wimbledon title or
Yeah.
like, you might have the best peak of moment in your life and you're like, oh, I forgot the milk in my grocery shop or something. Like, like I remember when my wife was pregnant and the water's broken, she's like, go get the toy for the brothers or something. I was like, what are you talking about? We've got to go to the hospital. She's like, and it was like, and I remember me doing it. I'm a panic sometimes. You're going, what about this? And you're like, oh, no, that's irrelevant, right? So
Totally.
don't beat yourself up on that. But I'm interested now. Like you're a gold medalist, and it's something which has changed the trajectory of your life. And we asked about the difference between Rosie the rower and Rosie the you now. The freedom or the understanding around what's next for you. Is there a goal? Is there a 5-year goal? Is there an Olympic goal now in your life?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm kind of almost mentally trying to do the opposite. So straight away after the Olympics, I was very much still in this gear. And I think I retired early 2022. So it took a year to retire. But I jumped straight into my corporate career and started in management consulting in KPMG and was like, okay, I want to, start to crush that. And then soon quickly I was like, oh, there's this, maybe doing an MBA or some form of business degree would be cool. So there's a really famous rowing race called the Cambridge-Oxford boat race, which is the two universities. And I was approached by some of the coaches to maybe go and do a degree, but also row for one of the universities. So I actually went and checked out both of them. And I was looking to do my MBA, so Masters of Business Administration, and they're both 1-year courses. So I was very much still in this like gear. But then when I went over to actually look at both universities, I was like, man, how cool would it be just to be like a student at one of these institutions? Like, I don't really want to, I'd done my undergrad degree at the University of California in Berkeley and done the student athlete thing and know what it's like to split my time. And I was really craving of kind of diving into something completely different that was in academics. So I actually went to Oxford and did my MBA, but it didn't do the boat race. And that was a very conscious decision because I really wanted to get the most out of the business degree. So I did that and kind of was still in this kind of always seeking, always kind of trying to soak everything out of each situation. And then did some travel after graduation last year and got back to Melbourne in November and just kind of hit a bit of a brick wall in terms of, when you're always striving for something. I think I kind of had that delayed like burnout of just like being on all the time and trying to do so much. So I've actually come back to my work at KPMG at the moment, but I'm actually just like giving myself the year to not have like a plan or not have a 5-year plan or trying to like always be the top performer in anything and kind of just going, okay, I think at the start of the conversation, like, what does healthy mean to me? What does balance mean to me? Because I know how to push really, really hard and I know how to like deliver under extreme stress and I know how to, bend myself inside out to do that. And I think, it kind of gets you into this like peaks and troughs. How can I be a little bit more steady? So my goal this year is kind of like the motto of just recovery and mentally getting really, really fresh because I know once I get stuck into that, for me, it's like, what's the next step in my career that is really, really important to me? And how can I give back to the sport of rowing, but sport in itself and in a way that feels authentic to me? So that's kind of what I'm doing now, but kind of really surrendering to the doing and just trying to be right now. And, I'm just working 4 days a week and just trying to, do all these other things on the side. And so that feels incredibly foreign to me, but I think, I know that it's on the right track because it feels really uncomfortable. And I've been back for, 5 months now and just starting to feel fresh, so that's how long it's taking. And I know there's probably another bit of that, but so yeah, I don't really have that next gold medal in mind, but I think whatever it will be, the definition of that will have to come to me, but I just don't want to push it right now.
I don't think the concept is overly foreign to you, to be honest, thinking about 2017.
2017? Oh, the recovery?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
the mindfulness, the reset, the recheck, the
Yeah.
traveling, the lemon farm. This is 8 years later, but this is to me it seems like quite a similar reset, a kind of a similar, more mature, more refined
Yeah.
reset where there's
And
no defined time, but also a point where you're going, right, I just need to recollaborate into
yeah,
something, and once I know what it is, I'm full throttle and I'm going again. Right,
totally.
so
Exactly.
it doesn't sound like too foreign to you, to be honest, after
Yeah.
listening to this
Yeah, no,
conversation.
that's
So
true. That's a good point. And I think, maybe is that, I'm not saying that I have to be recovered for rowing or something. It's actually going, you know, I might turn around and want to dive into something completely different. And I'm just kind of seeing if that feels right, but not restricting myself and not having a fixed mindset. I'm just really
or time,
dedicated.
really.
Yeah,
Time. Like, obviously the Olympics was a 4-year thing, but the
yeah,
time now is like there's no Olympics, so you just need
totally,
to get upstairs, downstairs, everywhere right
totally.
before you
Yeah,
before you get going. One
exactly.
final question. Some advice to a younger Rosie, a 15-year-old girl that loves rowing and goes, I've
Oh,
got a dream to win Olympic gold.
I've got a dream. Yeah, I used to be really, I mean, I guess we could have another whole podcast on this, but I used to have like a lot of performance anxiety, a lot of disordered eating, a lot of just being really, really, really negative and hard on myself. And I think if I could go back and just kind of really encourage that younger version of myself to be really, really kind and not try to look for, I guess, external approval, but give that to yourself. I think that's what I would tell her, that just being like, no matter what anyone else says or feels or does towards you, it's how you think about yourself. And I've said this a few times of other podcasts, is like, the person that you spend the most amount of time with in your whole life is yourself. Like, you may as well enjoy it. So that was something that probably took until my 20s. But yeah, if I could go back in time, this 6 foot 15-year-old girl trying to balance rowing and school and basketball and everything, just be completely kind to yourself.
Rosie Popa, it's been a delight having a chat to you today. Thank you so much for coming on to the Scoreboard podcast and giving us a bit of a glimpse into your life, what it takes to become world champion, what it takes to become an Olympic gold medalist, and what it takes to actually find yourself in regards to dreams and desires and goals, and the importance of reset and the importance of mindfulness. I wish you well in your venture, whatever that may be, in the coming years. Looking forward to following your progress and supporting you where I can.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris, and so appreciative of giving me the platform to share my story today. It was a lot of fun.